Hello, and welcome to Fundamentals of People Management, Module 2. I'm Dr. Lon Schiffbauer, and today we will be talking about talent acquisition. After all, an organization is an organization of people, so the first thing we need to do is hire the right people. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. Now, the first thing we need to call out is that much of the hiring process is controlled by HR, by human resources. However, and I'm speaking from experience here, there is nothing that HR likes more than informed, competent people managers who understand the process and can be a partner in the talent acquisition process rather than an obstacle or a hindrance. And trust me, plenty of managers are obstacles and hindrances. You don't want to be that. So yes, the better you understand this process, the more influence you will have on who ultimately joins your organization. And the first step of this process is determining the required skill sets necessary to meet organizational objectives. We're not just hiring willy-nilly, we're hiring because there is a specific condition in place. This condition is you have a problem. You cannot solve the problem with your current resources, and this problem is costing you money, which means there is a skills gap. If there was no skills gap, you could solve the problem with your current resources. And so we need to understand what are the skills that we need to meet our objectives. To do this, we are going to conduct a skills gap analysis. The first step of a skills gap analysis is to determine what is the actual organizational objective you are striving toward. Once you have that in place, you then understand what are the skills necessary to meet those objectives. Step 3 of the analysis is then to consider what are your current skill sets? What do you currently have in your organization? And where are the gaps? Where are you missing the skills necessary to meet that objective? Once you understand what skills are missing, your skills gap, you can then develop a plan to bridge this gap. Now, it may be through hiring, it may be through training, it may be through bringing on contract labor, it may be through internships. There are many solutions available to us, but we first need to understand the skills. So now that we have this skills gap analysis complete, we can then develop a job description. Now, a good job description should include things like the job title, the tasks associated with the position, the duties, the responsibilities, the essential functions of the role, and the minimal qualifications for the job. Now, it's worth noting that oftentimes when we look at a job description, we figure, this is just a document to outline the requirements for the position. But it actually serves a much more important function. It also sets performance criteria and acts as a guide for putting together a compensation package for this future employee. HR is going to do what's called a market comp to figure out how much we need to pay this person, and the job description is really kind of a North Star in this process. Now, most people managers don't understand this function of a job description, so HR will be impressed that you get this. Okay, so we've got a skills gap analysis and job description all sorted. So the next thing we need to do is recruit a qualified candidate. Now, of course, we can hire externally, post a job rec somewhere and so forth, but you should also consider hiring internally. This means things like promotions or job transfers or job rotations, job sharing. There are many ways that we can hire internally, but it's something we should give some thought toward because it comes with a lot of advantages. First of all, with an internal candidate, you have a pretty good understanding of what their core competencies are and what their job performance will be. Now, of course, with an external candidate, you're going to look at a resume and you're going to do some, interviews and so forth, but trust me, this is more akin to reading tea leaves more than anything else. With an internal candidate, you have much better visibility to their performance. You also know that the internal candidate is, a good fit for the organization, assuming they're a performing employee, and of course they are, otherwise you wouldn't consider them. So you really want to make sure that anybody you hire is a good cultural fit for your team. Well, an internal candidate already ticks that box. It's also considerably less expensive than hiring externally. And if you're going to be doing a lot of hiring, well, you want to really control those costs as much as possible. So internal hires are a good option there. Finally, most organizations have objectives around professional development, maybe even succession planning. Hiring internally helps support these objectives. Now, of course, these are the advantages, the pros to hiring internally, but there are cons as well. You're going to have less diversity, perhaps some cultural stagnation, and the truth of the matter is you may not have a lot of candidates to choose from. After all, there's a skills gap, and you may not have those skills available internally. So it's something you should consider, but don't consider it a panacea for all of your problems. Okay, so you've posted the rec, perhaps externally, perhaps internally. Regardless, you now have a whole bunch of applicants to look at. Let's talk about how to evaluate these applicants. Now, of course, you want to look at these candidates and consider them in light of their skills, their qualifications, and whether or not they're a good cultural fit for your organization. But there's more you want to consider. You also want to consider to what degree does the candidate add real value to the organization. We're talking bottom line. Will their contributions result in greater revenue, profit, cost savings, you name it, to your group? You also want to think about whether or not they're going to be happy in the role. Are they going to stick around? Trust me, there will be many candidates that you look at and say, oh my gosh, they're so qualified. They're even overqualified. They're fantastic. They're amazing. But are they going to be happy in your organization? You need to consider this because remember, hiring is expensive. So retention is your friend. If you're not sure whether or not this person is going to stick around, then even if they're just superb for the position, you may want to give them a second look. Okay, so these are the things we're considering when we're evaluating our candidates. Now, here are some steps we can actually take to pull this off. First, of course, we've got the resumes. I mean, that's ubiquitous, right? A resume, a CV, whatever you want to call it. And these are great for figuring out whether or not the candidate has the required education and, say, the minimum amount of work experience and the like. However, past this, they don't really tell us too much. So we need to keep digging. This brings us to interviews, but not just interviews. I want you to consider behavioral interviews. A behavioral interview is more than just this sort of ad hoc shoot from the hip talk between the hiring manager and the job candidate. A behavioral interview really gets at the specific skills and competencies the organization needs. Behavioral interview questions often start with phrases like, tell me about a time when, or this job will require the employee to do X, Y, and Z. Can you tell me about a time when you did X, Y, and Z? What were the results and what did you learn from the process? Behavioral interview questions will even try to suss out failures overtly. Tell us about a time when you worked with a customer to resolve an issue, but were unsuccessful in doing so. What was the core issue and what did you do afterwards to try to prevent this in the future? How did you mitigate for that failure? The idea is to really determine to the extent possible whether or not the job candidate has actually successfully used these skills. After all, the resume can say anything. Yeah, sure, I totally know how to do that. Yeah, well, give me a specific example of when you did that and what the results were. Next, we have panel interviews. Now, panel interviews can provide well-rounded perspective on the candidate's fit within the team and the organization. After all, this person is going to have to work with the team, and so it's important that the team is able to kind of determine and assess to the extent possible how well they would fit and to what degree they can add value to the already performing team. Remember, your current employees have a keen first-hand understanding of what it takes to be successful in the organization. They, perhaps more than anyone else, are well suited to evaluate possible additions to the team. Still, another way you can assess whether or not the job candidate has the skills that you need to bridge the skills gap is through work simulations. Work simulations come in many forms, such as assessing a case study and recommending possible solutions, creating an Excel spreadsheet to track inventory. I had to do that one once. Or designing a website or role-playing with a fictitious customer. All of these work simulations allow you as the hiring manager and your overall team to really determine whether or not the job candidate can do what you need them to do. Finally, we have job references. These are perhaps one of the most effective ways to really evaluate a job candidate. After all, we're talking with people who have actually worked with this individual. They know their skills, they know their competencies, they know their strengths and their weaknesses. These folks can give us a lot of insight into what kind of employee this job candidate would be. Now, yes, there are a lot of regulations and company policies that people need to follow when providing a job reference. But the truth of the matter is, most people don't really know what those policies are or don't even really care. If they really like an employee, the person that you're calling about, they're going to gush. They're going to say, oh, they were fantastic and marvelous and stupendous. One time we were calling for a job reference where I was working, and the person said, oh, you mean they're on the market? We would love to have them back. That's everything we needed to hear. It was great. On the other hand, if the person goes, oh, yeah, they were employed with us from this day to this day and their job was this, then that tells you a lot, and it's not necessarily good. So, yes, you want to use job references. Okay, so you've evaluated all the applicants, you've selected your top candidate, you extended a job offer, and they have accepted. Hallelujah. I'll tell you what, it's happened to me more than once where I extended a job offer and the person had already accepted a job somewhere else. So frustrating because now you got to go through this process all over. Anyway, I digress. Now what we want to do is talk about onboarding this employee. The better the onboarding process, the sooner the person will get ramped up and become a productive and contributing member of the team. So it's in your best interest to invest the time and resources necessary to help the process run smoothly. So to do this, the first thing you want to do is make sure that they have all the equipment and supplies needed on day one. I'll tell you what, a good friend of mine one time started a job, and we're talking a great big, huge, well-funded, smart, good company, and yet the day she showed up, no computer, no supplies. Even her manager was out of town. It was 2 weeks before she was able to start getting ramped up at all. That's 2 weeks of lost time. You don't want to do that. The next thing you want to make sure you do is get all of the necessary security protocols all set up. We're talking about passwords, badges, parking passes, things like this. It's often something we don't really think about, and yet they can't start working until they have these things in place. Then, of course, you'll want to show them around the office, introduce them to folks, kind of get them all set in their new workspace. So take the time to do this. Next, though, you really want to make sure that you set clear expectations concerning job responsibilities, performance standards, and what success looks like for the employee. Remember, they have no context for the organization, the company, the workflow, the processes, what they do, what's expected of them. You need to really make sure that you set the stage for them so that they know what their marching orders are and they know what their target is. Next, you'll want to assign a new hire buddy, someone the employee can turn to when they have questions or need help getting started. Next, make sure that you schedule and provide any training that the new employee needs. Remember, your company has a lot of internal processes, how things are done, what tools are used, enterprise systems, expectations, and the like. They didn't learn about this in their degree or certification, so you need to make sure that they are trained on the company-specific processes and standards. Next, as soon as is viable, hold a team-building event. This way, everyone can meet and get to know one another. Finally, for the first couple of months or so, you'll want to schedule regular touchpoint sessions. We're talking about employee-manager one-on-one sessions. We want to do this once a week. This way you can provide feedback, answer questions, and remove any obstacles that may be standing in their way. This is also really important when building the employee-manager relationship, this rapport. As you remember from our previous module, it's really important that the employee feel a sense of belonging and that they have a place and are able to contribute value to the organization. They get this from their manager. So it's important to take the time to really build a good, solid relationship with your new employee. And so there you go. You now have a good, solid overview of the talent acquisition process and the things you can do as the hiring manager to make this go as smoothly as possible. Remember, HR pretty much drives this process, but you can have a lot of say in how well or poorly it goes. You want to make sure it goes well. Now, of course, now that you have these folks on board, you'll want to start delegating responsibilities. And that is what we are going to cover in our next module. So stick around and let's keep going. And as always, until we talk again, have a fantastic day.